The sound my wife made that night belonged in an emergency room, not inside our master bathroom. I woke up at 2:13 a.m. to a sharp, choking noise and found Melissa kneeling beside the toilet in her satin robe, one hand gripping the counter, so hard her knuckles looked bleached under the vanity light. A folded packet of papers sat beside the sink. Houston Methodist logo across the top, red lettering near the bottom. Her mascara streaked halfway down her face, but the panic in her eyes hit harder than the tears. Melissa always controlled a room. Charity galas, wine tastings, board dinners. She moved through wealthy crowds like she owned gravity itself. That woman vanished somewhere between Napa Valley and our bathroom floor. I stepped closer and saw the paperwork trembling in her hand. "Ethan," she whispered, voice scraping raw. "I need you to promise you won't overreact." Funny thing about marriage. People think betrayal arrives with lipstick stains or anonymous text messages. Real betrayal walks through your front door, carrying medical paperwork, and trying to negotiate the reaction before the confession even lands. I picked up the report before she could stop me. The first page carried billing codes, lab timestamps, physician signatures. The second page carried the diagnosis. My eyes locked on the infectious disease panel first, because engineers scan documents differently than emotional people do. We look for anomalies, patterns, system failures. The highlighted result sat there in bold black letters like a bullet hole through drywall. Chlamydia trachomatis, positive. My pulse slowed instead of rising. That scared Melissa more than yelling ever could. She stood slowly and reached for my arm. The doctor said false positives happen sometimes. I kept reading. Collection date, Sunday, 8:42 p.m., 3 hours after her flight returned from Napa. Reviewing physician, Dr. Ryan Whitmore. That name tightened something deep in my chest. Ryan Whitmore, orthopedic surgeon, golf club regular, husband to Claire Whitmore, one of the couples we vacationed with every August. Melissa folded her arms across herself like she suddenly felt cold. "Ethan, say something." I studied the rest of the report carefully. Prescription recommendation already attached. Expedited treatment advised for sexual partner exposure. Exposure window estimated within recent weeks. Every sentence narrowed the room further. Melissa started pacing. Fast, sharp turns. The kind of pacing people do when their brain races ahead searching for escape routes. "I swear this isn't what you think." That sentence almost made me laugh because the report removed imagination entirely. Numbers, dates, lab confirmations. Medicine strips emotion out of lies. I set the paperwork back onto the marble counter with more care than she expected. Then I asked the only question that mattered. "Why was Ryan Whitmore reviewing your test results personally?" Her breathing stopped for half a second. Tiny pause. Tiny mistake. Engineers notice tiny failures before bridges collapse. Melissa looked toward the bathroom doorway like she wanted distance between us. "He was helping at the wedding because one of the guests got sick after the reception." Smooth answer. Fast answer. Prepared answer. But while she spoke, her Apple Watch lit up against the counter. A text notification flashed across the screen before the display dimmed. One sentence. One name. From Ryan. "Claire suspects something. Stop texting me tonight." I spent the next 20 minutes watching Melissa try to manage panic like a public relations crisis instead of a marriage collapse. She grabbed her phone, typed fast, erased messages, typed again, then locked the screen every time I shifted my eyes toward her. Most men would have attacked the lie directly. I wanted the structure underneath it first. Affairs leave patterns long before confessions. Financial drift. Schedule overlap. Behavioral compression. People juggling secrets always tighten their routines because deception burns energy. I walked into my office, closed the door halfway, and opened the Joint American Express account on my desktop. Melissa stood in the hallway for a second watching me, probably calculating whether she should push harder or retreat. Then she chose retreat. I heard the guest bedroom door close. Smart move. Distance buys cheaters time. I started with Napa. Wedding weekend expenses appeared in clean rows across the statement. Vineyard dinner. Resort spa. Private shuttle. Then I found the first crack. Friday night, 11:48 p.m. room service order billed to suite 1408. 2 entrees. 2 whiskey pours. 1 dessert tray. Melissa told me she shared a standard bridesmaid room with 2 women from the wedding party. Suite 1408 carried a premium executive rate. $1,400 a night. I opened another tab and pulled our shared location history through the family tracking app. Melissa forgot still synced to her old iPad downstairs. Saturday night. Her phone stayed inside the resort tower from 10:12 p.m. until nearly 4 a.m. No movement toward the bridesmaid wing. No rideshare request. No lobby exit. Just 6 straight hours parked on the executive floor. My jaw tightened harder with every timestamp. Then I searched Ryan Whitmore's clinic website. Orthopedic conference in San Francisco canceled the same weekend due to scheduling conflicts. Interesting wording. Wealthy men rarely cancel events for romance unless they already crossed too many lines to stop. I enlarged the wedding guest photos Melissa posted publicly 2 days earlier. Smiling bridesmaids. Champagne tower. Dance floor shots. Then one image caught my eye. Reflection in a mirrored wine cabinet behind the crowd. Ryan's hand pressed low against the back of Melissa's dress, while both of them faced away from the camera. Tiny detail. Tiny mistake. I saved the image immediately. My phone vibrated on the desk. Melissa, can we please talk like adults? I stared at the text for several seconds before replying. Adults usually avoid infecting their spouses. 3 dots appeared instantly on the screen, then vanished, then appeared again. Fear changes typing patterns. I knew because I spent 15 years reviewing engineering incident reports after structural failures. Guilty people overwrite language, constantly searching for the safest version of reality. Another notification arrived before Melissa answered. This one came from our bank's fraud monitoring system. A wire transfer request had triggered temporary review due to unusual activity. Amount, $75,000. Requested from our joint investment account at 1:37 a.m. Authorized user, Melissa Carter. Destination account holder, Whitmore Medical Consulting Group. I leaned back slowly in my chair, while something colder than anger settled into place inside my chest. Melissa was not trying to save our marriage. She was trying to contain fallout. Then my office door opened halfway, and she stepped inside holding her phone against her chest like a shield. Ethan, she said carefully, before you see anything else, I need you to understand Ryan is already talking to a lawyer. Melissa stayed near the doorway while I reopened the banking alert and read every line twice. People reveal priorities during collapse. Some protect family. Some protect reputation. Melissa protected financial exposure first. That told me more than the affair itself. Why would Ryan need $75,000 at 1:30 in the morning? I asked. Her eyes flicked toward my monitor before she answered. It is temporary. He asked for help covering something with the clinic. Weak answer. Wrong rhythm. Melissa usually sharpened every sentence before speaking. Tonight she swung blindly at holes inside a sinking wall. I opened the transfer metadata and checked the routing destination. Whitmore Medical Consulting Group existed under a secondary LLC registered 6 months earlier through a downtown Dallas corporate filing service that specialized in asset shielding. Interesting. Surgeons create shell entities for taxes all the time. Timing mattered more than existence. 6 months ago lined up almost perfectly with Melissa's sudden obsession with weekend wellness retreats and charity planning sessions. Patterns. Always patterns. I minimized the banking window and opened our property records next. The house sat under a survivorship trust one built years earlier after a bridge contractor lost everything during a divorce case tied to hidden debt exposure. Engineers spend careers preparing for catastrophic failure. I treated marriage the same way even while believing mine stood on solid steel. Melissa used to tease me for reading legal clauses at midnight. You prepare for disasters before they exist, she once laughed. Turns out I married one. She stepped farther into the office and lowered her voice carefully. Ryan says Claire hired a private investigator last month. That landed differently. Affairs survive on fantasy until surveillance enters the room. Once somebody starts documenting timelines, panic spreads fast. I leaned back slowly. How long has Claire suspected? Melissa crossed her arms tighter. A few weeks maybe. Lie. The answer came too fast again. I opened another browser tab and searched public county filings under Claire Whitmore. 3 entries appeared immediately. Consultation request with a forensic accounting firm. Petition draft tied to marital asset review. Temporary records preservation order submitted 4 days ago. Claire already moved pieces across the board, while Melissa still believed this remained emotional damage control. My respect for Claire rose instantly. Smart spouses gather evidence quietly before confrontation. Melissa saw my expression change and panic sharpened across her face. Ethan, please listen to me. Ryan told me Claire has people pulling financial records now. She is trying to destroy him. I almost smiled at that sentence. Cheaters always describe consequences as attacks instead of reactions. I folded my hands together and studied my wife carefully. 17 years together taught me every version of her performance voice. Tonight she used the same tone she once used convincing charity donors to increase pledges at gala dinners. Controlled breathing, soft eye contact, strategic vulnerability. But underneath it I saw a raw survival instinct clawing for leverage. So let me understand this, I said evenly. Your married boyfriend faces forensic accountants, legal exposure, and medical liability. Meanwhile, you attempted a $75,000 transfer from our joint investments before waking me up with a sexually transmitted disease diagnosis. Melissa's face drained pale enough to match the marble behind her. She opened her mouth, searching for a cleaner version of reality, but another sound interrupted her. Her phone buzzed again against her chest. This time she failed to hide the screen before my eyes caught the message preview. From Claire Whitmore. 3 words only. We need receipts. Melissa locked her phone immediately after the message appeared, but timing already destroyed her advantage. Claire Whitmore had entered the game directly, and that shifted every power line inside the room. Affairs survive through compartmentalization. The husband knows one version. The wife knows another. The lover builds a third. Once the betrayed spouses begin exchanging information, the fantasy collapses under synchronized timelines. Melissa sat across from me finally, shoulders tight, eyes swollen from stress instead of guilt. Big difference. Guilty people fear exposure. Panicked people fear consequences. Claire thinks Ryan moved money through the consulting account to hide assets before divorce filings, she said carefully. That is why she wants receipts. I opened the transaction history again and expanded the wire request metadata. Melissa's transfer authorization carried an internal memo line. Temporary retention support. I stared at those 3 words longer than the amount itself. Retention support. Ryan framed the affair like a business liability already in containment mode. That meant legal counsel entered the picture before tonight. My stomach hardened. How long has he prepared for this? Melissa rubbed both hands together slowly. A couple weeks maybe. Another week answer. I reached for my phone and opened archived photo backups from the country club charity gala 6 months earlier. Ryan and Melissa appeared beside each other in nearly every candid shot once I started looking properly. Small touches, shared glances, positioning patterns during group photos. Human attraction leaves geometry behind. I enlarged one image from the silent auction table. Ryan wore the same Rolex he wore in the wedding reflection photo. Melissa held his bourbon glass while he signed a donor pledge. Intimacy hides inside tiny logistics. My phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown Dallas number. I answered immediately and heard a woman inhale sharply before speaking. Ethan. Claire Whitmore sounded exhausted in the specific way wealthy women sound after months of private humiliation. Controlled voice. Damaged breathing underneath it. Melissa's head snapped upward when she heard Claire's name. I think our spouses made the same mistake, Claire said. Straight to the point. No crying. No theatrics. Smart woman. How much do you know? I asked. Papers shuffled softly on her end. Enough to hire forensic accountants. Enough to subpoena financial records by Friday morning. Enough to understand Ryan moved money after Napa. Melissa stood abruptly from the chair and mouthed hang up toward me like panic itself had taken physical shape. I ignored her. Claire continued speaking with surgical precision. Ryan rented a private suite under the clinic account during the wedding weekend. My investigator pulled invoice records yesterday. There it was. External verification. Independent evidence. Clean and unemotional. Better than confession. Melissa pressed both palms against her forehead. Claire, please, she whispered loudly enough for the phone to catch. Silence hit the line for 2 seconds. Then Claire spoke again, colder this time. Melissa, I spent 11 years defending that man in public. Save your performance for somebody else. I leaned back slowly while Melissa's face crumpled under the weight of another betrayed spouse refusing manipulation. Then Claire delivered the sentence that changed everything. Ethan, before you make any decisions tomorrow morning, you need to know one more thing. Ryan already filed paperwork transferring ownership of his medical practice yesterday afternoon. Half the assets disappeared before either of us learned the truth. Claire stayed on the line another 40 minutes while Melissa sat frozen across from me, gripping the edge of the chair, hard enough to leave crescent marks in her own skin. The conversation shifted from emotional fallout into documentation strategy fast, because Claire already operated 3 steps ahead of both cheaters. She hired a forensic accountant 2 weeks earlier after Ryan started liquidating small investment positions under the excuse of clinic restructuring. Most spouses miss those signals because betrayal rarely starts inside bedrooms. It starts inside spreadsheets. Claire walked me through everything she already uncovered. Secondary checking accounts, deferred compensation transfers, luxury purchases billed through medical conferences, private travel reimbursements disguised as continuing education expenses. Ryan built layers between the affair and the money because wealthy people understand one brutal truth. Judges punish dishonesty harder than infidelity. Melissa stared at me with widening panic while Claire explained how Ryan moved ownership percentages of the practice into a trust controlled by his older brother in Arizona. He prepared for war before either of us knew the battlefield existed. Claire said quietly, "Smart line. Accurate line." I opened another browser window and searched Texas marital asset concealment penalties while she talked. Triple damages in extreme fraud cases. Temporary injunction options. Emergency financial freezes. My engineering career taught me something valuable years ago. Structural collapse spreads fastest during delayed response. Move early or lose the entire framework. Melissa finally spoke after sitting silent almost an hour. Ryan told me the transfer was temporary until Claire calmed down. Claire laughed once through the phone. Short, sharp, empty. Melissa, men who plan temporary affairs do not hire asset protection attorneys. That sentence hit the room like a cracked support beam. I watched Melissa's face change slowly as reality finally outran fantasy. Ryan never planned escape with her. He planned survival for himself. Affairs thrive on illusion because secret relationships strip away ordinary burdens. Bills vanish. Laundry disappears. Real life stays outsourced to spouses maintaining the infrastructure at home. The moment legal exposure enters, selfish people retreat towards self-preservation instantly. Melissa stood and paced beside the kitchen island while I printed transaction logs from our joint account. Her breathing grew shallower every minute. "Ethan, I swear I thought he loved me." Claire answered before I could. Men in their 50s do not hide 6 figures in shell accounts for love. They hide 6 figures because they expect casualties. Silence followed. That line. Heavy silence. The kind that changes marriages permanently. I organized every document into folders automatically because calm action steadies the mind during disaster. Medical report. Wire transfer attempt. Suite invoice. Location history. Consulting LLC registration. Every piece fit tighter now. Then I noticed something buried inside the wire transfer metadata timestamp. Authorization request originated from Ryan's clinic network directly at 1:37 a.m., meaning Melissa never initiated the transfer from her own device. Somebody inside the clinic processed it remotely using stored banking credentials. My stomach tightened instantly. "Claire," I said slowly, eyes locked on the screen. "Does Ryan's clinic employ an internal compliance officer?" "Yes," she answered immediately. "Why?" I enlarged the transaction certificate another level until the authorization signature appeared clearly at the bottom. My pulse slowed to ice. The compliance officer listed on the transfer approval was not Ryan Whitmore. It was Melissa Carter. Melissa looked at the compliance authorization like somebody watching their own fingerprints appear on a murder weapon. Her lips parted slightly, but words stalled somewhere behind panic. Claire stayed silent on the phone for several seconds before speaking again, voice colder now, cleaner, almost relieved. "So Ryan used your wife to approve internal financial movement." Melissa shook her head immediately. "That is not what happened." Weak sentence. Weak timing. I zoomed further into the transfer certificate and found Melissa's digital authorization credentials attached to the approval chain. Employee identification number. Internal compliance signature. Timestamp verification. Somebody at the clinic granted her operational access far beyond event consulting. "You worked for him," I said quietly. Melissa rubbed both hands against her face hard enough to smear makeup across her cheeks. Only part-time consulting for fundraising events. Another partial truth. Partial truths always arrive before full collapse. Claire exhaled sharply through the phone. Ryan listed Melissa as an independent compliance contractor 3 months ago. My attorney found payroll traces yesterday. That explained the shell account structure instantly. Ryan needed somebody emotionally compromised enough to approve questionable transfers while remaining outside direct medical ownership. Melissa became useful long before she became disposable. I organized the printed documents into chronological order across the desk, while my brain kept assembling timelines automatically. 6 months ago, Ryan forms the consulting LLC. 3 months ago, Melissa joins payroll quietly. 2 weeks ago, Claire hires forensic accountants. 4 days ago, Ryan starts asset transfers. Tonight, Melissa walks into my house carrying a medical diagnosis and $75,000 worth of exposure. Affairs always think they are love stories. Most of them operate like amateur conspiracies with worse accounting. Melissa stepped closer toward me carefully, like somebody approaching a wounded animal. "Ethan, listen to me." Ryan said Claire was already planning divorce before any of this happened. I looked up slowly. "And that justified infecting your husband while laundering money through medical shell companies?" Her eyes watered instantly at the word laundering. Good. That meant she finally understood the scale shifting beneath her feet. Infidelity destroys marriages. Financial misconduct destroys entire lives. Licenses vanish. Assets freeze. Lawsuits spread. Claire spoke again before Melissa could answer. "Ethan, you need counsel immediately. If Melissa approved transfers through clinic compliance systems, your joint assets could face discovery requests." There it was. The real earthquake. My name sat attached to shared accounts, shared property, shared tax filings. Ryan and Melissa dragged legal contamination straight into my financial perimeter. I opened our investment dashboard again and began moving funds calmly into protected trust structures already tied to my engineering firm. Years earlier, a senior contractor taught me an important survival rule after a multi-million-dollar lawsuit nearly wiped him out. Separation creates leverage. Delay creates victims. Melissa watched the transfers happening live across the monitor, and panic surged harder. Across her face. "Ethan, please do not lock me out financially." Interesting choice of words. She still framed survival as access. I completed the first transfer, then the second. Protected reserves. Emergency legal allocation. Business continuity fund. My phone buzzed again before I could speak further. Another unknown number. I answered immediately. Male voice this time. Smooth. Controlled. Professional. "Ethan," Ryan Whitmore said calmly, "before your wife says anything else tonight, you should know Claire already forwarded your medical report to the Texas Medical Board." Ryan Whitmore sounded calm in the same way expensive lawyers sound calm, right before billing somebody $400 an hour to destroy their life. That voice irritated me more than panic would have. Panic means somebody understands consequences. Calm means somebody still believes they can control the board. The medical board already has the report? I asked evenly. Melissa turned pale beside the desk. Ryan answered immediately. Claire submitted it with allegations tied to patient safety and undisclosed exposure risks. My attorneys are handling containment now. Containment. Another corporate word replacing morality. I leaned back slowly and studied Melissa while Ryan continued talking like a man negotiating damage around a collapsed building instead of discussing marriages and disease exposure. Your wife acted emotionally tonight, Ryan said. Claire escalated things before we could structure a cleaner resolution. Melissa covered her mouth instantly after hearing that phrase. Cleaner resolution. There it was. The affair already evolved beyond fantasy dinners and hotel suites. They planned logistics. Financial exits. Reputation management. Structured fallout. I muted the call briefly and looked directly at Melissa. How long were you planning to leave? Tears slid down her face immediately. Real tears this time. Late tears. Ryan promised he would finalize separation after the new clinic acquisition closed. Acquisition? Of course. Wealthy professionals schedule betrayal around quarterly transitions and liquidity events now. Romance barely entered the equation anymore. Ryan's voice crackled through the phone speaker again. Ethan, I know emotions are high, but your exposure remains medically manageable if addressed quickly. That sentence froze the room colder than anything else tonight. Exposure. Manageable. like I was some secondary operational inconvenience attached to his risk portfolio. I unmuted the line carefully. You infected my wife. She brought that home to me. Then both of you attempted to shift marital assets while hiding shell accounts through clinic compliance systems. Silence stretched for 2 full seconds before Ryan answered again, softer this time. You should choose your words carefully. There it was. Threat language wrapped in professionalism. Melissa stepped forward quickly. Ryan, stop talking. Smart instinct. Too late. I opened screen recording software quietly and archived the call automatically. Engineers document everything during system failure because memory collapses under stress while timestamps survive courtrooms. Claire suddenly rejoined the call from another line merge. Her voice arrived sharp enough to cut glass. Excellent advice, Ryan. Maybe you should have chosen your own words carefully before billing private hotel suites through clinic reimbursement accounts. Dead silence hit the line instantly. Ryan recovered fast, though. Men like him spend careers controlling operating rooms and board meetings. Claire, your investigator exceeded legal boundaries already. Interesting, Claire replied calmly. Because my attorney says Melissa's compliance credentials created direct access into protected transaction logs. Federal investigators usually enjoy those kinds of details. Melissa physically staggered backward after hearing federal investigators. That phrase finally cracked the illusion completely. Affairs feel glamorous until white-collar exposure enters the room. Suddenly, everybody remembers signatures, authorizations, encrypted timestamps, payroll records. Ryan's breathing changed slightly for the first time all night. Tiny shift. Tiny fracture. Nobody committed fraud, he said carefully. Weak defense. Premature defense too. Claire laughed softly. You moved marital assets into a shell structure. 48 hours before exposure while your mistress approved internal transfer compliance. You built the paper trail yourself. I watched Melissa sink slowly into the chair beside the kitchen island while years of curated suburban perfection collapsed around her in real time. Charity galas, country club smiles, Napa wine weekends. All of it reduced to transaction records and infectious disease paperwork. Then Ryan said the one sentence that changed the entire night. Ethan, before you decide who the victim is here, you should ask your wife what happened in Aspen last February. The room stayed completely still after Ryan mentioned Aspen. Melissa looked like somebody ripped oxygen out of her lungs. Tiny reactions tell the truth faster than speeches ever will. Her right hand trembled once against the kitchen counter before she hid it behind her back. Fear. Real fear this time. Claire caught it too because her voice sharpened instantly through the speaker. What happened in Aspen? Ryan answered before Melissa could recover. Tell them about the conference suite at the Little Nell. Tell your husband, who paid for the upgraded penthouse. Melissa closed her eyes hard enough to crease her forehead. I stayed quiet because silence pressures guilty people better than shouting ever does. Ryan continued speaking smoothly, almost confidently now that he sensed the balance shifting. Melissa told me her marriage ended emotionally years ago. She said Ethan buried himself inside engineering contracts and treated her like infrastructure. Interesting strategy. Affairs always rewrite history retroactively. Every anniversary becomes fake. Every vacation becomes lonely. Every sacrifice becomes neglect. Cheaters build moral permission first because guilt requires architecture too. Melissa finally snapped back. Stop twisting this. Ryan laughed softly. Melissa, you signed consulting invoices from Aspen yourself. There it was again. Documentation. Every emotional argument tonight eventually crashed into paper trails. I opened my laptop immediately and searched archive travel expenses connected to our joint tax deductions from February. Aspen Conference Retreat appeared under Melissa's nonprofit consulting expenses. For nights. Luxury accommodations. Transportation reimbursement. $32,000 total. My stomach hardened further when I opened the receipt attachments. 2 guests registered under the penthouse reservation. Melissa Carter. Ryan Whitmore. I heard Claire inhale sharply through the phone. You told me that conference involved 6 board members, she said quietly. Melissa pressed both hands against the marble countertop like she needed physical support to remain standing. Ryan said the receipts had to match donor sponsorship records. Weak explanation. Worst timing. Ryan answered instantly. Because you agreed to help structure everything. Another silence. Another collapse. I studied the Aspen invoices carefully while my brain kept calculating implications. The Shell LLC already existed by then. Melissa approved compliance transfers months earlier. Aspen was not an emotional accident. Aspen was operational, planned, organized, budgeted. That realization hurt more than the diagnosis somehow. Affairs born from impulse feel ugly. Affairs built through coordinated logistics feel calculated. Claire spoke again, slower this time. Ryan, did you use clinic funds for Aspen? He hesitated. Tiny pause. Tiny fracture. Business development covered portions of the trip. Translation. Yes. Melissa suddenly stepped toward my desk. Ethan, please listen to me. Ryan handled all the finances. I thought everything stayed legal. I finally looked directly at her again after almost 20 minutes focused on documents instead of faces. You approved compliance certifications under your own name. Her mouth opened slightly, but no answer arrived. Because there was none left. Ryan interrupted before she could spiral further. Ethan, your wife is emotionally unstable tonight. She never understood the complexity of the financial structure. There it was. Betrayal always ends the same way. The man who promised escape eventually protects himself first. Melissa stared at the phone speaker like she finally met the real version of Ryan Whitmore for the first time. Claire caught it too. You used her, she said coldly. Ryan exhaled. Slowly. I protected all of us until panic ruined the timeline. That sentence changed everything inside Melissa's face. Years of fantasy shattered in one moment, because Ryan finally said the quiet part out loud. She was never the future. She was operational risk management wrapped in attention and hotel suites. Then another notification hit my inbox with a sharp alert tone from the banking freeze system. Emergency legal hold request submitted at 3:14 a.m. Requesting party. Whitmore Medical Consulting Group. Listed authorized compliance signer, Melissa Carter. The legal hold request sat on my screen like a loaded weapon pointed straight at Melissa's future. Her name appeared everywhere now. Compliance signer. Authorization approval. Consulting contractor. The affair stopped looking romantic hours ago. By 3:14 in the morning, it looked federal. Melissa grabbed the edge of the desk and whispered Ryan's name under her breath like prayer might still save her. Ryan answered calmly through the phone speaker. The hold protects clinic assets until counsel finishes review. Claire laughed once, colder than before. You mean until investigators start pulling transfer logs? I muted the call and opened the legal freeze documents carefully. The filing timestamp matched the exact minute Melissa received the wire authorization alert. Ryan moved fast after realizing exposure spread beyond marriage. Smart men protect money first. Great men protect character first. Ryan protected neither. Melissa stared at the compliance paperwork with hollow eyes now. Fantasy finally died inside her face completely. No more glamorous weekends. No more wine country lies. Just signatures, timestamps, and disease exposure tied to shell companies. Ethan, she whispered, voice cracking apart. I never thought this would reach this point. I looked directly at her for the first time in several minutes. That is the problem with hidden things. People think secrets stay emotional forever. Then lawyers arrive. She broke then. Full collapse. Tears. Shaking hands. Barely controlled breathing. But even inside that moment, part of me stayed detached. Engineers learn emotional distance after. Enough structural disasters. Panic helps nobody while the bridge keeps falling. I finalized the remaining asset protections tied to my engineering firm and exported every document from tonight into encrypted cloud storage. 3 backups. 2 external drives. 1 attorney access folder scheduled for automatic release at 8 in the morning. Melissa watched every step silently because she finally understood something brutal. Calm men become dangerous once trust evaporates. Claire rejoined the conversation after speaking privately with her attorney. Ethan, my counsel wants copies of the transfer chain and compliance approvals before sunrise. You will have them, I answered immediately. Ryan interrupted sharply this time. You are making a mistake escalating this. Interesting sentence. Men only fear escalation when evidence already cornered them. I unmuted the line fully again. You involved my finances, my marriage, and my medical safety. Escalation arrived before I entered the room. Silence followed that one. Long silence. Then Ryan shifted tactics completely. Melissa loved you once, Ethan. You buried yourself inside work and left space for somebody else. Same excuse again. Same recycled morality. Affairs always rewrite loneliness into permission. I leaned back slowly and looked around the kitchen we spent 17 years building together. Family holidays, mortgage payments, backyard dinners, routine, stability, real life. Melissa traded all of it for a man already hiding money through shell entities while planning legal exits behind her back. Love does not ask spouses to sign compliance fraud at 1 a.m, I said quietly. Love does not transfer diseases and call it complicated. Melissa lowered her head instantly after that sentence. Claire stayed silent too, because some truths end conversations instead of continuing them. I disconnected the call finally, and the house fell completely quiet for the first time all night. Melissa sat alone at the island while I carried the printed evidence into my office. Every page felt heavier than paper should. Medical reports, Aspen invoices, transfer requests, hotel receipts. I locked everything inside the fireproof cabinet beside my drafting desk and entered the code slowly. Then my phone vibrated one final time before dawn. New email notification. Sender, Texas Medical Board Investigations Division. Subject line, request for voluntary statement regarding Whitmore Medical Consulting Group. I stared at the screen for several seconds before setting the phone down beside the cabinet. Funny thing about betrayal. People think the affair becomes the ending. Most of the time, the affair is only the first document in a much larger file.